Good day folks and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the Me262, specifically the Me262 variants. This will be sort of a hybrid between War Thunder and historic video. Because the Me262 is one of those aircraft everyone knows and loves here in War Thunder, and there are several versions of the 262 available in game, ranging from the basic A1A fighter up to the A2 fighter bomber to the C series of fast climbing interceptors. But those are only a fraction of the 262s that existed in real life, and that's why today we're gonna look at 5 262 variants War Thunder still needs. There are of course more than 5 missing, but these are the ones that I selected to be added. A lot of the others were blueprint aircraft, so I am focusing on those from which prototypes were known to exist. And with that out of the way, let's then start with the first variant. And we'll start out the list with the Me262A-1b. These were 3, or 2 according to other sources, prototypes fitted with the BMW 003 instead of the UMO 004. This was likely because the 262 was planned from the start to receive the 003, but that engine's protracted development led to the 004 being put on the series aircraft, and that's despite the 003 starting development earlier than the UMO engine. Although the 003 would of course go on to power the Heinkel 162 and the C variant of the Arado 234 jet bomber. The BMW 003 was smaller and lighter, and therefore the A1B has different engine ports. Other than that, it seems to be visually the same as the regular 262. There isn't really that much known about these machines. They would be somewhat slower than the regular A1A fighter, since the 003 only produces 7.8 kilonewtons of thrust compared to the 8.7 kilonewtons of the UMO engine. I've once read a top speed of 800 kilometers per hour was achieved, but I can't really remember where. This was years ago when I made some research as I built the A1B as a model. In any case, this variant would be positioned at a lower battle rating than the regular A1A we have in game, probably around 6.0 to 6.3. Next up is the Me262A1A-U5. The U suffix designates a factory conversion set, in this case an additional pair of 30mm cannons. A single example of this was built, Werknummer factory number 112-355. An additional pair of 30mm Mk108s was positioned near the tip of the nose, bringing the total number of Mk108s to 6, making V355 one of the most heavily armed aircraft of World War II. Not much else is known about this prototype, however. In game, the U5 would be at the same BR as the regular A1A. Flight performance should be generally the same, the only change really is the additional pair of Mk108s, and I don't think that warrants the U5 to be higher in BR than the A1A. It's a different story with the U1, because that one has the 30mm Mk103s plus the 220s, and that's a certain improvement in armament compared to the regular 262, so I kinda can't see why the A1AU1 is currently at 7.3. But with the A1AU5, I don't think this should go up in BR. It should be at the same BR as the regular A1A. At the number 3 spot, we find the Me262A2U2. This is one of the weirder 262 variants. This was a dedicated bomber version of the A2 fighter bomber. 2 prototypes were built. What sets it apart from the regular 262 is the addition of a second crew member, a bombardier in newly designed extended nose, featuring a cramped compartment not too dissimilar in concept than the droop snoot fitted to some P-38Js. Because of the cramped conditions, the bombardier would lie in a prone position. He operated a Lotfe 7H bomb sight, which cured one of the biggest problems that plagued the fighter-bomber variants of the 262, that being the inability to accurately drop their ordnance. The aircraft was a pure bomber, designated a Schnellstbomber, which, well, literally means just very fast bomber, and therefore it featured no offensive or defensive armament. Although one document regarding the missile use of the 262s refers to a 262 with a second compartment and two Mk108 as the carrier aircraft. Speaking of missile use, this was one of the intended uses of the U-2. Because of the second crew member, the U-2 was ideal for this sort of operation. A missile is basically a manned aircraft sitting on top of a flying bomb converted from another aircraft. In this variant of the missile, called Missile 4, the bomb converted was in fact another 262. The first prototype, Werknummer 110-484, made its first flight in September of 1944. By the end of that year, it had accumulated 22 test flights. This includes 2 bombing test runs in December of 1944, both of which were deemed successful. Shortly thereafter, 484 was joined by a second A2 U-2, Werknummer 110-555. This aircraft flew for the first time in February of 1945. It had a slightly revised bombardier's nose and featured 2 large antennas. Lack of fuel severely hampered further flight testing. After flying 16 test missions, the aircraft made a gear-up landing, although it was only very lightly damaged. It was captured like that by the Americans, and no further U-2s could be built before the war ended. Now, this is a very interesting aircraft to balance. It's probably a good bit faster and therefore more survivable than the Arado B2 we currently have in game, but it hasn't really the carrying capacity of the Arado. Even though both aircraft fill exactly the same role, the fighter bomber 262s only carry 2 500 kg bombs max. Compare that to the 1.5 ton bomb load the Arado can carry. Therefore, I will see this aircraft either at a BR of 6.0 or 6.3. And the number 2 spot goes to the Me262 night fighters, specifically the Me262B-1a U1. These were converted from 2-seat trainers. The armament stayed the same as in the basic fighter variant, but the machine was given new equipment to transform these aircraft into the first jet-powered night fighters. Most prominently, the machines were given the Funkgerät 218 Neptune radar to make night interceptions possible. The large antennas created drag and made the aircraft slower than a regular 262, but nevertheless, the Me262B-1a U1 was the fastest night fighter the Luftwaffe had to offer. Only few, however, were built converted from B-1a trainers, and despite only a handful being made, they apparently did score a number of kills, and this was the only German night fighter that could reliably catch up to the dreaded de Havilland Mosquito. They did so over Berlin, where the only night fighter jet squad, 10. Gruppe Nachtjagdgeschwader 11, was stationed. Flying with this group was none other than Kurt Welter, the highest scoring 262 ace, and also this guy is the highest scoring jet ace of all time. Fun fact, I might make a video about this topic, since there isn't really much information about the 262 night fighters, and because of that I just ordered a book specifically about the 262 B-1a U1 and its operational career. So look forward to that video. The machines were given 300-liter drop tanks to compensate for the loss of the fuselage tank that had to be omitted because of the enlarged cockpit. There were more than one night fighter versions, however. The first one was actually a single prototype designated VO56, which was a single-seater A1A and featured the prominent antennas for the Liechtenstein SN2 radar. And from the successes of the improvised B1As, the B2A was developed. It seems that one of these machines was actually built, although sources are somewhat conflicting. This further development featured a more streamlined canopy and would have replaced the antler antennas of the Neptune radar with the so-called Morgenstern arrangement. The production version was to be fitted with the Centromatic Funkgerät 240 Berlin that didn't require large antennas and would have transformed the B2 into a formidable night fighter. The aircraft was also to carry two 30mm Mk108s in a schräge Musik style arrangement. However, no further, if any, of the B2s were built. This leaves us with the VO56 and the B1AU1. The latter is the one I really want to see in game, since the dual-seater would be visually appealing, as well as offer a 262 at a lower BR, since the increased drag will make it slower, and therefore I could see the B1A at a battle rating of 6.0. And for the number 1 spot, we have no other than the Me262HG1. The history of this thing is a bit convoluted, but what the HG1 is basically the first attempt in the Luftwaffe's quest for even higher speeds in the 262. Pretty early on, Germany was investigating how swept-back wings affect the performance of an aircraft. The HG, which stands for Hochgeschwindigkeit, series featured increasing wing sweeps to make the 262 even faster. 3 stages of this research are known: HG 1, 2 and 3. Of these, only one was definitely built and flown before the war. This was HG1. This started out as the prototype Me262V9. V9 was fitted with a streamlined canopy known as the Rennkabine, racing cabin, and the tail surfaces were modified to a higher sweep of 40 degrees. By the end of 44, these conversions were complete, and the aircraft was test flown in this configuration. These tests showed a marked increase in speed and acceleration, with a top speed of 965 km reportedly recorded, but the increased sweep on the tailplane led to instability and was subsequently built back to its original configuration. The next step was to incorporate the leading edge extensions to the inner parts of the wings. While these seem to have been built, it is unknown if they were ever fitted to the aircraft. These leading edge extensions featured a much higher sweep, giving the aircraft a somewhat crescent-shaped wing. Conversion parts for HG2, which was to be converted from Werk number 115-538, were apparently finished, but sources disagree if the aircraft was finished. Some say it was under construction, others say it was nearing flight testing before being damaged in a ground accident. Therefore, HG1 is my choice as the number 1 spot, since that aircraft actually flew. HG1 would sit slightly higher than the standard 262. I'd see it at a BR of 7.3. And with that said, this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.